this conference was organized actually in the framework of a new research project, which is entitled Justice and Catastrophe. So, as a very opening before giving the floor to our guest keynote speaker, I would like to read a short statement, well, maybe it's a bit longer than shorter, on exactly what's the basic of this research project. So, it's entitled actually Risk, Justice, and Catastrophe. Perhaps you have it in the documents you received. Since it was first put forward by Ulrich Beck in 1986, the idea that the perception of risk constitutes a central dimension of modern society has been widely accepted in sociology. Risk, however, as Beck argues, only exists before a catastrophe happens, and is related to the measures that should be taken in order to avoid it. Thus, the risk society approach focuses on the role which the prospect and prevention of catastrophe play in modern society, rather than on the issues that arise in the aftermath of catastrophe, apart from the inevitable question of asking if the right measures, if adequate precautions were taken in order to avoid the catastrophe. More recently, Jean-Pierre Dupuis, our keynote speaker, in Un Catastrophisme éclairé in 2002, introduced the notion of enlightened doomsaying. But his focus there is also on prevention, understood in a broad sense, and on how to avoid the catastrophe, which is conceived as entirely foreseeable. Dupuis later, in Petite Métaphysique des Tsunamis, recently translated into Japanese, proposed a metaphysical analysis of catastrophe, which argues that in such situations the claims of justice and ethics are overridden. There is in fact an ancient philosophical tradition which alleges that the urgency and necessity characteristic of catastrophic situations overrule and silence the demands of justice. If it were true that justice has to remain silent in the aftermath of catastrophe, we think that from a moral point of view, this silence would probably be catastrophic. However, this has not been the case, and at least as far as social catastrophes are concerned, war, genocide, and other crime against humanity, there has been extensive reflection on the place and role of justice in the aftermath of social disasters. Our own research is related to this trend, but we wish to extend the reflection on justice and catastrophe to other kinds of catastrophes: natural events, technological accidents, ecological disasters, public health crises, and also personal catastrophes. Furthermore, not only do we think that in the aftermath of catastrophes, numerous issues of justice arise, but also that catastrophes are particularly revealing of the nature of justice. The first challenge faced by any attempt to extend the catastrophe, other than social catastrophes, reflection on justice, concerns the nature of catastrophe. What is a catastrophe? What type of event constitutes a catastrophe? To some extent, this is a question of vocabulary. But our research requires that we clearly define the object of our inquiry. Major natural and personal disaster like an earthquake, or the death of a close and dear person, as well as social calamities like war and financial crisis, are often given as examples of catastrophes. Yet it is not clear that this everyday use of the term captures a well-defined class of event. A catastrophe, we argue, is an event that inaugurates a period where what constituted agents' reasonable expectation before the event happened does not anymore once the event has taken place. For example, tomorrow I'm going to Tokyo. After my class, I will go back home. Sunday friends are coming over. During lunchtime, I will go to the post office, and so on. These are all normal and ordinary expectations, which we form without paying attention to the fact that we do form them, and which constantly organize the horizon of our actions. However, An event like what happened on March 11, 2011 in Japan invalidates such expectations and fractures the temporal horizon which they define. The catastrophe happens not only when one or more reasonable expectations are falsified by future events, for this regularly happens, but when it suddenly becomes impossible to make sound expectations concerning the future. When it becomes impossible to distinguish clearly between what is a reasonable and what is not a reasonable expectation. Where will I sleep tomorrow? When will I be able to return to my house? What becomes of employees of factories which have been destroyed? A catastrophe is an event that tears apart the fabric of expectation by which we attempt to give stability to our life. Simultaneously, the catastrophe constitutes a new beginning, a singular point in time from where different expectations are progressively formed and new forms of what can be and new norms of what can be reasonably expected arise. In view of this definition, we can identify three ways in which catastrophes challenge our current theories of justice and expose them to fundamental questions. First, catastrophes as situations of emergency, and as Professor